In the last video, we left off by creating this pseudo selector for hover. And not too long from now, but one of the last things that we'll do is we'll also take care of the rest of these pseudo selectors. But I want to move on and introduce a couple new concepts to you. So if we go back to the grade sheet, you can see one of the items here that we have to take care of is that the second line of text in the footer needs to be 70% of the default text size. So that's going to present us with a problem in that that text is located inside of paragraph tags, but so is a lot of other stuff. So if we write for just a paragraph tag, then all of our paragraphs are going to be 70% of the size. So how do we address something without addressing other things? Well, we now have the need to go deeper than just element selectors for the CSS. To refresh your memory under the CSS tutorial, CSS Syntax, this is what we've been doing so far, is writing for elements, things that go by name in HTML, like paragraph, like H1, H2, H3, etc. But now, to identify something more specifically, like to target out things, we need to learn about two more options, the ID selector and the class selector. We'll be using this one, so just for thoroughness, I'll just tell you basically the real difference between the ID selector is that instead of starting out with a period like a class selector does, it starts out with a pound sign. ID selectors are supposed to be specific, unique, like you typically use it just one time in a page. So we'll go on to the class selector, and this is what we're going to be doing. We'll look at the example that they have in here so you can see how this works. But basically in the CSS, you write it like this. Starts out with a period, and then you make up a name. Here, this could be anything as long as you use the same name in your HTML, meaning this. In the HTML, you have to say class equals, and then inside of these two quotation marks, you put that name that you made up. If I go into the CSS here in this example and I change that made up name to something else and click on See Results, we just go back to the defaults here because the CSS is looking for something named center, and CSS doesn't exist. So if I go in here and change this to our made up name, click on See Results, that becomes centered in red. And if I change this one, click on See Results, it takes the effect now too. So I'm just trying to make it obvious that this has to equal this. So now let's go ahead and do that for our example. So we'll start in the CSS. It was the second line that we're after. So I'll put class, and you can see that Dreamweaver's helping me, so I'll hit enter, puts in the quotation marks, and now I need to come up with that made up name. So we'll just call this small, and use the same exact name that I'm using so that when you make your other style sheet that's coming up, you won't have to do as much work. Now we go to our CSS, and we're going to write this for small. Now watch what happens when I hit the period key. This drop down comes up with all the different choices we have of class selectors. We've only made one so far, but it's nice. It remembered that, makes our life easy. Then we're going to go ahead and write in what we want for this. And it is font size that we're after. So probably just typing a couple things here. It should give us some hints. Or maybe not. Sometimes you have to go back up to this opening quote, then hit return, and then start to type in, and it kind of wakes it back up and says, oh yeah, you're looking for some hints here. So font size. Now, pause this video after I explain this and see if you can figure this out. What size are we going to set that to? We want 70% of the default font size. Okay, so hopefully you paused it, try to figure it out. The answer is we want to do everything in M's, is going to be 0.7 M. And there it is in a browser. 0.7 is synonymous with 70%. And then just keep in mind, once we do this in the CSS, it's done in the CSS. But however, we made a change in our source code in our HTML So we need to now replace the opening p tag in all of our footers, which happens to be just the 2 other pages. So we go into each of the 2 other pages and just swipe over this whole entire opening paragraph tag, Command V to paste that in there because I copied it earlier, and that should also work for that page, and then I just need to do it for the 3rd page. Very important note here, you don't see me do it every time because I pause these videos as I make them, and I go out and I check the things as I do them, and I highly suggest that you do the same. And so in the rare event that there is an error, I like to share it with you. So here you can see that everything looks fine at the bottom of the pages on my main page. It is fine on the favorites page. It's not fine on the web page. Now, so the first thing I'm going to say is, oh, maybe the browser's remembering the last state, and so I'm going to refresh it, but no, still not right. Now I'm going to go back into the page, and I said it was the knowledge page, and I'm going to look there. It looks like I did everything right. I don't see any highlights of red over here. It looks like I have the opening caret, the closing caret. I mean, I did a copy and paste, which is one way to avoid errors. In this case, it just happens to be a simple overlook that when I previewed in the browser, it always asks you if you want to save the page. But I was on probably the favorites page, and I said yes. Well, look, at the knowledge page hasn't been saved. So when you have multiple pages open and you're making multiple edits, you should just go ahead and do a file, save all, then do a preview in browser. And I am willing to bet that that was all it would take to fix that. But let's go to the knowledge page. Yeah, see, so it wasn't really an error at all, just missed saving it. And one little bit of housekeeping here inside of our CSS page is, I said it's nice to organize this. So here's where we wrote all of our elements. Here's where we're starting to write our navigation. So we should probably do something similar to announce right here. We'll just paste that in. In my case, I pasted it in. In your case, you might have to write this out in between the comments. But class selector, so everything that falls below here is going to be our class selector. So let's go back to the grade sheet and see what else we can knock out. So under lists, it says all unordered lists will use square bullets. When you see a word like all, that's good news because it means you can write specifically for a tag. But when you see something more specific like this, it's letting us know that we're going to probably have to do another class selector. But let's take care of this one first. So all unordered lists will use square bullets. So I am going to write another element selector for CSS. So I can just make room for that here. And that's going to be for all unordered lists. So I can write just specifically to UL. And there exists an animal called the list style type right there. Double click on it, and then what's nice is when we double click on it and let Dreamweaver do the work, it will also help us decide which one to use, and we're looking for square. And what's nice here is you get to see what other things are available to you for future options. And just to keep this consistent with my other stuff, I'm going to put a space in there and semicolon, and we also have to remember to finish out our curly bracket. And then we can see either automatically or with a refresh that we now have square bullets. We could also check that in a browser if we want, and we should see that every single UL has square bullet points on it now. We're going to have 3 different type of things going on with our ordered list. We're going to have numbers, we're going to have indented letters, and then we're going to have one that uses just letters. So here again, we have to get specific. So let's take care of this one. Inner list on the index, the home page, will use lowercase alphabetical characters. So what that means is we want to fix this abnormality here so that this goes 1, 2, 3, and then under 2 we have A and B. It makes sense to start with the HTML rather than the CSS, so I need to find out where that subdented or ordered list inside of an ordered list is, and it happens to be right in here. So I go to this ordered list, and that's where I put my class in. Dreamweaver help me, and here I'm making up a name, so how about something that kind of makes sense, like lower underscore alpha, standing for lowercase alphabet. And then what I'm going to do, well, actually I don't have to copy and paste because Dreamweaver remembers this for me. So now I go into my CSS, I go down to my class selector area, and as soon as I press a period, it's going to remember what I have as far as class selectors go, and there they are, the previous one and the one we just wrote. So double click on that, puts that in there, and then we just write the CSS for it. And again, that's a list style type, and then from the choices that'll come up when you type this, you want, trying to save time here, but actually it creates more time some case because it forgets the hints once I just pause my software, so sorry about that. But so list style type, and then my space, and then searching for something to the effect of lower alpha. There we go. Finish that off with the semicolon. Don't forget your closing curly brace, and then we'll test that in the browser. So that's working perfect, and then that takes us to our next task, which is under the knowledge page. To me, it makes more sense, since we're using numbers in here to describe our abilities, that these should be capital letters. Once again, we start by finding that area in our HTML. Start out with the word class, and then make something up. Go similar naming, upper alpha this time. Switch over to the CSS. Go ahead, start with that period, and whoop, yeah, why is the lower alpha missing from this list? I won't question that right now, as long as the one I need is there. And again, list style type, space, and then we want upper alpha. Finish off our curly bracket. Okay, and that's looking good for us. So we've knocked all of these out. Let's go back up here and take care of the current link. So we want it to look kind of like a link, but we don't want it to be interactive. We don't want the cursor to change to a finger when it goes over the top of it. And we're going to take care of this with span tags. So we have to get a little explanation of what span tags are. A real common use of a span tag would be, imagine that we wanted to draw attention to this word progress, just for example, and we wanted to change its color to pink or something. Well, the problem is if we wrote it for a class for the paragraph, this particular paragraph, it would change the whole entire paragraph. So we need a way to grab just single items in code sometimes. And W3 Schools has a great example of just what I'm talking about here. Right here, we wanted to take this sentence and change just the word blue, of blue eyes, to blue. So if we go into the code here, we can see that what they did, this is their outcome, just that word is changed, and to achieve that, they wrote a span tag and surrounded that word. Now they have the style built right into it, so let me show you what it would look like in our case. In fact, I'll just go right to where we're going to use it. We're going to use the span tag to identify our current link on each page. So let me make sure I'm on the first page, index, and we'll go up to the source code for those links. And in fact, I already did it here. So what I did was I removed the A tag that surrounds it. So I removed that and replaced it with the word span, and I removed it here and replaced it with the word, or the closing tag, span. So what we're going to do here is, now that we've got the span tag in here, now we're going to put our class in. So let Dreamweaver do some of the work for us, and let's put something in here that makes sense, like current underscore link. Okay, and then we'll continue with the CSS in the next video.